Hey, what's up, guys? We're back again today, Straw Hat Crew. Today, we're visiting a favorite of my friend Joey, the kid. You know, this deck cannot be ignored in our meta. It has great matchups across the board, and the leader ability is just spectacular. So I'm just going to get right into the list and go over a couple things for you guys. 4 beige Capone, standard blocker, 1 cost, nothing too special with him. 4 Bonnie, essential to the Supernova archetype, allowing you to dig for vital pieces like the 8-drop Kid or the 5-drop Law. We're on 3 Kazaku. The reasoning for this, it's not quite as good as Bonnie, though you still want to open it. This will allow you to get to the land of Wano cards, which we are playing a few, but again, it's not as important as Bonnie, so we went with 3 for spacing. For Nico. This card, excellent. In the early game or the late game, it can tap down a blocker that your opponent might be using in the late game, and in the early game, it can clear up some problematic cards. Especially being able to hit 3 or less for a 2 cost is very valuable. To continue with the 2 drops, we have the 2-drop Killer. It has the Don 1 ability on block. If you have 3 or more characters, you draw a card. This is useful for keeping up your card advantage for Eustass, so you have more cards in your hand later in the game when you're trying to go for game. But that ability won't always come up. It's just the fact that it's a blocker. It helps with the 8-drop Kit to create that lock. 4 Scratch is one of the Supernovas. It's mostly just a 2k that you can grab off of Bonnie. Its effect is not very that relevant to me. 2 Killers. This killer can be foregone if you choose to do so, but if you're seeing a lot of red decks, and even the mirror it can be okay in, but mostly against red, this is when you need this. Especially with that powerful trigger, if they hit it with one of their Rush Zoros and it comes out, you can just give it a Zoro. Continuing the 3 drops, we have 4 Izo. This card, similar to Nico, just costs a little bit more, but it also has the 2k, which is something that we really want. And you can use the Momo to grab the Izo in case you need to stock up on some defense. So this card is very useful. 4 Okiku. Now this is similar to Red's Nico Robin. It does not kill, unfortunately, but it has a wider range. It can hit 5 costs or less, so this definitely helps you control the board a lot. You want to use this card if you can. Unfortunately, it has no plus power, but that's the trade-off for powerful cards. And then speaking of powerful cards, there's 1 Yamato. You could argue for playing more copies of this, but typically you only need the 1 to stick and to actually resolve because you have the Kid to take the rest of the prizes if this resolves. So we just like it at 1. You can search it out. Now, something you might think about subbing between each other is the Yamato and the Basil Hawk, but Basil Hawk is pivotal for clearing up the board in the late game. You almost always want to play this on curve, just because it has that double attack. 2 X-Drake. Again, another Supernova, so you can add it to your hand. It has pretty good stat line for 5. And it can just help you clear up the board. It unfortunately can't hit everything, but it does have pretty good access to what you can hit. And then 3 of the boy, the Law. We felt that 4 was just clogging the hand a little bit too much and you just wanted more card diversity. But this card is phenomenal, especially in this deck. It's a little bit better, I argue, in the red-green deck, but it still has its place in here for reusing your cards and abilities, getting them off multiple times, like the Izo, for example. And just bouncing out like a 1-cost character for a 3-cost is great value, so we like this card. 2 Eustass, 7 from the starter, so it has the ability to set it as active for non-1. So at the end of the turn, if you decide to get aggressive with it and start clearing the board, it'll restand. So it's very similar to the leader in the fact that how the leader attacks twice, this can attack and block. So this card is very useful for what the deck tries to achieve by controlling the board. And then last but not least, one of the more important cards, Eustass the Kid 8-drop. So this card obviously can just win you the game when you get the Dawn ability. It is a little costly, so that's why we decided to go with 2, and because it's searchable, but I definitely have seen players play 3 to 4 of this because they rely on this solely to win the game most of the time. We tried to go for a more wider spread, but again, I would say there could be a place for there being 3 to 4 copies if you choose to do so. But at least 2. I don't think you could get away with 1. 2 is probably the perfect number. And then that is all of our character cards. We're going to get into some of our event cards. There's just a couple. So for starters, there's 1 Straw Sword. Now, this card is very similar to the Izo and the Nico, where it taps something, but it can tap anything. The only difference is it has to be played during your main, so it's not exactly the best trigger. The trigger effect can get you a blocker out of your hand in a bad scenario. This combos nicely with, go figure, the guy on the card, Basil Hawk. Yeah, you could play 2 of it if you find the room for it. It is a very good card and it just lets you clear the board, which is green's primary focus. Then we have 3 Paradise Waterfall, being one of the best triggers because you can KO when your opponent's trying to finish the game out with their lower cost creatures. And then even if you don't want to use the trigger, you can just hold it back in your hand for the counter effect. And the counter effect is actually, believe it or not, very useful compared to the next event card I'm going to show you, because you can restand wall, say, after you block something, or you can restand the kid after you block something. So that's very valuable right there. You can get a 2. You can block something with this card, have already blocked something, and then block for a 3rd time if you choose to do so. So this card is very powerful, but you don't want it to be clumpy, so 3 is like the perfect number. And then 1 Pump Gibson. Again, similar to the Paradise Waterfall, but in our opinion, it's just like not quite as good, and it costs a little bit more, but the trigger effect is a little bit better. So you could switch them around if you want, but we feel that this is great. So again, the kid, its primary focus is just clearing the board through its ability. You don't always have to commit to the field. You can just keep your hand size large and just start swinging with him with Dawn. It's actually a really good strategy against the purple deck because they have so much removal. So yeah, if there's anything else you guys want to see, comment, rate, subscribe, and let me know. Have a great day.